Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, Poly Innovator. Today I'm talking with Daria Vodopianova, a 2X TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and a co-founder of the Thought Leadership Academy. Thank you for joining me on the Polymath Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We were talking beforehand. I was like already thinking in my head, this is going to be great. And so this is a show by Poly Innovators, so please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hello, everyone listening and watching this. I'm so happy to connect with you. Please take a pen and paper, get crazy with us and creative, and let's innovate and create together.
For sure. And so we're here to talk about the why, what, and how of thought leadership and how to become an expert in your field. I'm excited about that. The way I like to break the ice is to have you share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
Oh, no one knows about me. I'm an introvert. So some people know that, and it's funny thing because I'm speaking, I'm TEDx, I have a big community and I'm everywhere all the time, like speaking and sharing my knowledge because I love doing that, but I'm actually an introvert. So there are moments where my partner since 10 years, he's an extreme extrovert, very social. And we've been a couple for 10 years, been co-founders for 9 years. And For a long time, I was following his path and, always being out there. And we lived in a shared house with 4 other people. We were 6 in the house for 4 years as a couple. And we were running the business in the house as well for the first years. When we just started out, we were in our 20s, early 20s. And I always thought that, well, I'm also social. I'm a social person, but what I thought was that introversion was being shy. And when I understood that the introversion has nothing to do with being shy or not, I understood that I was actually an introvert. And what that means is that I need time for myself. For instance, as we're recording this tonight, there's a small dinner gathering, very small, very COVID restriction friendly, where I was supposed to go, and I realized that I cannot do it. I will be recording 5 hours of podcast today, and I will need to be with myself tonight and just like cozy up my sofa and just like watch something or read something or just like be with myself, journal. And realizing that was a big aha moment for me because, when you're out there, when I said that, or I was feeling that I need that time for myself to kind of digest what's going on in my life and all these different inputs that I get from traveling, from speaking with different people throughout the day, understanding that introversion has nothing to do with being shy or not. It's just how when things come into my life, like energy and people, and I need to digest that. And my partner Sebastian digests that by going out again and meeting new people. I digest that by being alone, having that one day alone at home when I don't see anyone, I don't speak to anyone. So that's something that not many people know about me.
I love that. And as an introvert, I have those introverted days and extroverted days. So it's interesting seeing the dynamic. And it's always curious too, because the people I have on the show, I'm like, okay, I've seen their content. I see how giddy they are on stage or something like that. And then they tell me they're an introvert. I'm like, what? It doesn't seem like that would be that way, but it makes sense. Like you have to kind of recover yourself and understand your own energy flow.
Absolutely. And it's such a big awakening to understand that, oh, actually right now, like you just kind of feel it when you're like, okay, I have my dose of speaking with people and being with people where you basically cannot take it anymore. You just have to kind of close yourself down in this bubble for 1 hour. Maybe sometimes just 1 hour, just being with yourself for 1 hour. I like to have that morning ritual in the morning where I just sit down with myself and just like having my coffee in the morning with myself. It just is such an important moment for me. And my partner, he wants to speak. The first thing when he wakes up in the morning, he wants to talk about everything. Blah, blah, blah. So actually I wake up 1 hour before him just to have that moment for myself and just like, whew, I can be with myself. And then I'm ready for the world. And then I'm ready to kind of be with others. So
that gives me a little bit more insight on my flatmate who is introverted. And so he often wakes up earlier than me. I thought it was just because he naturally woke up early. I think it's because I do the same thing where the first thing I do is say hi. And so he just wanted that time by himself.
Maybe you should ask him after, you'll see.
And I will say 5 hours of podcast or 1 hour polycast in this case, it is pretty hard. Like even for someone who is more extroverted like myself, even I had to sit down and like, hey, I need to process all that we did today.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm really happy because I had a podcast like this. As we're recording this, it's 4 p.m. here in Portugal, in Lisbon. And I was recording one episode this morning. So I had time in between, again, to kind of digest and do other things and be present for this episode.
Right. That's great. And so starting off, what was your mindset 5 years ago and how have you changed since then?
So much. I've been an entrepreneur for almost all my life. I have the only job, let's say normal job I had ever was working for a family business, two co-founders who started from nothing, from scratch, and grew a company to 200 employees. That's the only job I had. I was working as their like right hand and key account manager for them when I was very young. I was 21 when I was already running one of their companies. So when I started, I knew I was an entrepreneur, but I always was self-taught somehow. I had a mentor because the founder I worked for was like a mentor for me. But the first 5 years in my own business, when I opened my own company when I was 21, I tried to do everything by myself. I had this, like, I can do this. I don't need any help. I didn't think about getting coached by anyone or getting support. And to be honest, about 5 years ago, I realized like I have to get help because I can only go as far by myself, and I know some stuff, and I'm a natural entrepreneur. I love the creation. I just like, I bubble with new ideas all the time, and I love people, and I love what it represents in a lifestyle to be an entrepreneur. However, I didn't know how to get help. I didn't know that actually to grow, I need to get support through coaches, training, hiring, having a team. It took me up to this year in year 9 in my business to actually hire. And I'm just been thinking, why didn't I do it early? I have 2 assistants today, and my life in my business has changed so much, things like that. So getting help, I mean, if you talk about mindset, 5 years ago, I was like that, the lone wolf, like I can do everything by myself. I don't need anyone help, because if I ask for help, it means that I'm not strong enough, and I don't have the capacity to like, I wanted to be that strong, young womanpreneur or entrepreneur that can do it yourself, Somehow I felt that if I don't do that, then that means that I'm weak somehow or something like that. And today I just feel like that's the best thing I can ask for. Like every time when I think about growth in our mission, I'm thinking, how can I get help? Who can be my partner in crime, like my co-founder, or even our clients and community. The way we're building it today, it's more like part of a bigger mission together, where we are on the guide, but they are the heroes, and we are, helping them on that journey. So my whole mindset has shifted when it comes to how to run the business, because I realized that I can only go as far if I go like this. That's the big shift. If you talk about, there are other shifts, but this was the big shift for me for the last 5 years.
Well, and it's understanding the delegates and having the ability to let go of that particular workflow.
Yes.
And it's interesting too, because we were just talking about that right before recording, where I'm trying to work on this new site, and yes, there's just certain things that are a little bit beyond my capability that I can learn. But whether or not I should learn that and focus on something more important is the key thing there.
I think it's about understanding that, yes, you can do it. And that's the thing. I knew that I can learn this stuff, but I realized as well, like, okay, this is not my mission. My mission is not to learn how to run Facebook ads or how to, do the editing of my videos. That's not what I really care about, because it's good to know how to do it if I need to. But what I want to do is to be out there and share my message. So if I can be like, the reason why I can do 5 hours of podcast today is because my team has been able to book me on podcast, and they do the follow-up. So I can basically come and be fully present just to be here and serve at my highest level. Mm-hmm. And that I cannot do if I'm trying to do, book myself on podcast, follow up, do the social media, and run the company at the same time.
Right. And I think one thing I was wanting to point out too is that the people who are listening in might be more polymathic, more people who are interdisciplinary, and people like that, they want to have all their hands in different cookie jars, which can be unfocused, but also too can be a really good thing. But it's interesting how if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, that can be detrimental, because if you have your hands everywhere, that's good. You're able to hold all the hats, but it's also bad because it's holding you back sometimes.
Yeah, and I think there are other ways to actually be, multidisciplinary and have the creative flow of going different directions, and just to realize, like, what am I doing because I'm having a fear of letting go? A lot of it has to do with the control of, like, I want to control this stuff in my business, so therefore I'm not letting people to actually help me. It can be either coaches, consultants, or like trainers, or even a team member. And there's the question of like, okay, I want to expand. And the way I do that, because I really try to do less of the things that I should not be doing in the company, and even for my co-founder, like really focusing on where am I making the biggest impact on our mission. However, I love learning. So for instance, all the things we have to do with online trainings or reading or learning video trainings or following a program. Like for instance, right now I want to grow my YouTube channel and my podcast, and I'm just curious. So I've taken the time to learn about that because I'm curious about that, and then start to implement that. Doesn't mean that I cannot do that in my business. I can. However, all the behind the scene, all the back end should not be done by me.
Yeah. There is a YouTube course by Think Media. It's a YouTube channel, but they have Video Ranking Academy, and it's a pretty cool course, by the way. Well, and it's interesting too, because we're both coaches, and whether it's thought leadership or in my case, swimming, I think that as a coach, we can see when someone needs to progress. And so there's often things that we see as coaches that people don't even know that exist at that particular point as the students, that if we can get them past those points quickly, they'll exponentially grow in that particular skill.
Absolutely.
So what particular areas do you look for as a coach?
I look at two parts. One is, where can we find a shortcut? Because a lot of things that we are doing, like when I help a coach to grow their thought leadership, is a lot about getting them to 6 figures in their business so they can have some sustainability, and then start to work on real impact. Like how much can you really be out there and share your message and impact without sacrificing your life and your time, and with family time, like really finding that balance of more impact but also more freedom. So when I do that, I look into what can we do to create a shortcut in your business, meaning are there things that you're doing that are not really making an impact? Are the things that you are doing in your day, like it doesn't really matter if you can do things that you want in your free time, but when it comes to your mission, like are you using your time wisely? That's the first thing. We look into like how can we go faster towards the goal that you're putting. The second part is, what are your limiting beliefs? Because most of the times the reason why we are not doing the things that we should be doing, that we want to be doing, that are, our whole being is calling for that type of action, going on stage or writing that book or, speaking with that potential client of ours, has to do with limiting beliefs. We don't think that we are good enough, and we don't think that people will accept us for who we are. And actually helping people to have the courage to be and really believe in them, and help them to say, well, okay, I'm not afraid of rejection. I will deal with imposter syndrome. I can deal with, I know what to do about procrastination. I know what to do about perfectionism. All those limiting beliefs that are stopping us. It's something I work a lot on with them as well. So there's basically a part of strategy that is like, how can you go faster? I'm a strategist. I love strategy, but it's also, you cannot put strategy if people are limited. Like you can see what you have to do, but if you're afraid to get on that call and actually ask a client to work with you, I can put all the strategies in the world. But if you are afraid of rejection and we don't cover that, we will be stuck at the same point for years. So we need to address both parts.
Right. Well, and it comes down to that macro versus micro thing as well. So the macro is the strategies, the why, and the micro is being like the how and what. How do you need to do it? But if you can't do it because you're limiting yourself, like you're saying, then that what is what we need to target first then too, I guess.
Yes. And you have to be intuitive. That's why I like to, we have a limit of how many members we work with at the same time. We have maximum 100 members in our academy at the same time, because I want to be intuitive and see what's going on. Like, what's the answer you're telling me when we speak? And what's the real answer? Why you're not doing something? And going beyond that first idea, like if you tell me like I didn't have time to call that client, like really, was that the reason? Or is there something else that is underlying, like actually I don't feel I'm good enough to offer this offer, or like I feel imposter, or I don't feel like, this is really what I want to do, or, sometimes that's, and I don't feel excited anymore about this, understanding why are you not taking action, not just pushing people to take action.
Well, and that's fantastic. I think that because this little spout of information you just did already, it already proves your thought leadership to the audience listening in. And so you've certainly built up your thought leadership elsewhere as well. And ironically, on building thought leadership. So how can we as content creators then scale our thought leadership sustainably?
So I think there are two things to it. One is to start to create content for others. And what I mean by that is that when I create content, when I speak, my goal is to speak to someone specifically. So every time I have a podcast, like for instance, like yesterday we were speaking with my partner about the 3 new keynotes he's going to run with this year. And for each keynote, we were thinking about who needs to hear that from our clients and what are they going through and what are the lessons and advice you want to give them. And based on the real person, I create all my content. So every time I have a podcast, new podcast interview or a live show I'm doing something, I'm recording myself in terms of content, I have a person in mind. I'm thinking about like, okay, I need to do this for David, or I need to do this for Maria. Like this is for her because she had this problem last week when we were having the coaching call, and I want to go in depth on that. And because there are other people like Maria who might have the same situation, I will be able to serve more people with my content, which is not only in the one-on-one conversation. So that's how I see on content when it comes to be providing real value, is to really base it on my real life conversations with my clients, with my community. Like even from this conversation we are having right now, something will come out that will create some ideas that I want to cover in my upcoming live shows, because it's a real situation. I'm not making apps content. I basically replicate the content I already spoke about in a one-on-one conversation to a bigger audience, and basically fine tune it. I make it sharper, and then I put that together into something that everyone can use. That's the first one. The second part is consistency. If you don't have consistency, like if you just ask yourself a question like, okay, I would like to be a content creator. How often do you create content? And there's an amazing live video. I actually spoke about this morning in another podcast, and I watched it yesterday again because it's so amazing. Comes from the Patreon founder, and he talks about the importance of create to publish and not to finalize. So we don't want to finish something. We don't want to have like, I want to finish the recording. I want to finish this art piece. I want to finish. Those things are never finished. You never finish a song. You never finish an art piece. You never finish even a model for your content, for your coaching business. You never finish anything. Your goal should be focus on publishing, focus on getting to the point where people can actually use it. And I think that's really important, to switch the conception of having a podcast episode being finished. It's never finished. Most of the times when we finish something, like when we publish something, we say, well, it could have been better. But if we produce more content, we'll be able to actually touch more people, and we'll never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I was watching an episode yesterday with Seth Godin and Marie Forleo, where they mentioned that Woody Allen has produced 49 movies. And he says himself that half of them are not that good. They may be even below average. So that's the thing. We need to realize that we can produce and we can do our best, but we don't really know what's going to work. So for that reason, we need to create consistency and be out there and actually create some momentum around our content.
Well, and regardless of quality too, the idea that some particular piece of content, like one of your old videos may end up being something that resonates with somebody. And a lot of creators like Gary Vee or Roberto Blake, they talk about doing 100 videos, even if they're not the greatest, just get them out there. Quantity comes before quality.
Yes, and you get better. Your quality gets better because you get sharper and you can always improve. And I really believe that you need to be better. Like if you want to communicate and be a speaker, then yes, of course, it's an art form. It's something that you work on, something that you develop. However, don't get stuck in the cave mode where you're not producing content because you're afraid that it's not good enough. When you start to produce more, you might realize, like, there's one episode I did 2 years ago on the podcast. I still have people writing to me. I could never think that it's going to have any big impact, to be very honest. That specific episode, I did it. I was excited. I was happy to share my message. But the fact that people still get back to me 2 years later, I'm like, wow, it's impressive. I could never think about it. So that's the thing. You never know where it's going to resonate because you cannot have the control of this very complex thing, which is internet.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you mentioned consistency, and that's been one of my biggest motivators too, because I have failed at consistency a lot of the time, but I've tried, and each time getting a little bit better. And before I do any courses or books, anything the big kind of like that, I focus on purely getting the consistent content out there, the omni content and Polycast in this case. But it's interesting how that is something that's most important in your view too.
Absolutely. And I think that if you watch the biggest, artists, creators, filmmakers, even like coaches, consultants, content creators, if you look at the way they think about content creation, they think about consistency. Like they are out there for years. Marty Furlow has been doing her show for 10 years.
Right.
Seth Godin has been consistently coming out with a blog post for 20 years, day in and day out. So if you're thinking, I'm not getting traction with my content, like if you've done 10 podcast episodes or, if you've done a blog post once a month and you're not getting traction, it's not that it's not working. Maybe you're just not doing enough quantity for people to actually access that, and something will go viral and something will resonate. And then, you're on that journey of new collaborations and, opening up opportunities basically.
Well, and something you mentioned there is that get to the published, not to actually complete, because nothing ever is really completed. Even if you complete a blog post, Neil Patel talks about going back to your old blog posts and revamping them. And that's actually, we were talking beforehand about how I was moved 180 of my blog posts, but I've been blogging since 2012, 2011. So I should have more than that by now. But what happened was I was moving between platforms. Each time I would do that, I would revamp my blog posts. So instead of making new ones, I would just remake the old ones into a better way.
Yeah, I think that's great. And there are two things that you kind of touch on here. One is the Kaizen way. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kaizen way, which is like a Japanese philosophy where you have a constant improvement of what you are creating. And I'm a huge fan of that. When I create anything, even for my programs, I spend 30 minutes every day, almost every day, improving the content I have for my clients, the content I have for my blog post. So I will put the Pomodoro on. If you don't know if you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique, you spend like 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and I just work on something for 30 minutes just to improve it. Yeah. And then I move over to something else. And not because it's not good enough. I just want to make it better because I want our academy to be the best ever for thought leaders. It's really, for me, we are at highest levels of excellence that we can be. So even if no one is saying that we should be better, I want it to be better. If I can improve something even an inch in terms of experience every day, I know that we are going in the right direction. So this is the way I see everything I create. Is like really like Kaizen. How can I have constant improvement without putting like a stress or pressure on myself? Just like when I'm in the mood to improve, to create, I'll think like, okay, what can I do right now to create something extra? Like just before coming here, I'm creating a new podcast episode about automation in business. And I felt like, why not create a checklist for my podcast listeners? So I just sat down for half an hour and worked on a checklist. And then I got excited and I actually did a half an hour more and I finished it. So now I have a checklist that comes with the episode. It's nothing that someone asked me to do, but it just got me excited to be creative at that specific moment. So I think it's just like, the constant improvement like you're doing as well. It's something that is really amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And is that going to be a downloadable or a blog post checklist?
It can be downloadable. So usually I have not every episode, but I try to have 60% of my podcast episodes with a downloadable workbook.
Well, and something you mentioned too, by the way, we like to get really meta on the podcast. So if you want to get really into self-improvement, that's perfectly within the realm of this show. And then Leonardo da Vinci, who's my hero, he often touched on his old pieces throughout his entire life. He was still painting the Mona Lisa when he was like 70 something.
Wow. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so he was a perfectionist and he always wanted to make it better and better because as his skills got better, he wanted to make his art better. And
exactly.
I've done the same thing with some of my graphics design where I'll literally go in and just not release anything because I just want to keep editing it until it gets better.
Yes, but you can release it and then you can come back to it and then you can see what's really functioning. So what I like to do is like if I like to create worksheets and checklists and things that people can like get their hands on and get work on. And the ones that are working the best, I will go back to them and I will improve them and optimize the ones that are actually used already by people and say, okay, I can rework this one specifically because I know if we look into the 2080 of which worksheet is the most used by my community, that one specifically is the one that people want. So I'm going to work on that specifically, not the one that has 2 downloads, but actually the one that has most downloads,
Yeah. You get to funnel which one's better for you. And so Absolutely. Why, you kind of touched on this, but why is building thought leadership important?
So many reasons. I mean, first, if we talk about our environment and what the future of work, like where are we going? Most people are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. Even now more than ever, as we're recording this, many people realize that they can work from home, they can work on their own, like be their own boss somehow and work remotely wherever they want. They can be in the countryside, they can work from a computer. And another thing that happens at the moment is that the coaching industry is becoming one of the biggest industries in the world. And what does that mean? If you're a coach consultant, and it's the biggest, fastest industry in the world, if you are a life coach, let's say, or a business coach, and someone typed that on Google, what will happen? You know, there's going to be like 300, 5,000, I don't know how many business coaches. So from the point of view of your potential client, they come in and they say, I need some help, but now I'm just feeling overload of information. So I'm not going to choose anything, because that's what happens. If we have too much choice and we don't see the difference, we just cannot make a decision. So they decide not to take a business coach. It can be with any industry. It can be even photographer. Like if I was looking for someone to do a headshots with us for our social media. Mm-hmm. And I just did the mistake of writing on Facebook, like, I would like to get some help. And I got like hundreds of messages from photographers, and I didn't know how to choose. So in the end, what did I do? Well, I asked a friend, I liked her photo, like who took this photo, give me the same person, because I cannot spend a week mm-hmm. choosing who I'm going to work with. And this is what happens with people. So if you don't know how to stand out and actually explain what you're good at, it's going to be very hard for you to share your services. So what will happen if you're a life coach, a business coach, or, you know, a coach for somehow, a yoga teacher, or photographer, and there are hundreds of thousands of people like you, of course you're different, but for your client, they don't see the difference. Mm-hmm. They will start to ask you about pricing, and you will compete over pricing, which is never a good idea. So what you want to do instead is to understand, what is my secret recipe? If I look at what I've been doing throughout the years, my experience, what I learned, who I am as a person, how I deliver my message, what is that secret recipe of mine? And if I can really narrow it down to, this is my recipe and this is what I can do, and this is the step-by-step process for you to get there, to get to the exact same outcome that I got to. If I can show you how to do that, that is worth so much more than telling me that you're going to help me with my business as a business coach or life coach. So for me to have, I help people really to understand the thought leadership, because I believe that a lot of people are sitting with gold minds, gold opportunities of, those recipes that they have, and they don't know how to get that to the world. Sometimes they don't even realize their superpowers. They don't realize, this is what you're really good at. Like, I spoke with one of my clients last week, and she's an amazing, networking queen. And she was telling me and I like to tell stories in my, when I do this and this and this, I like to tell stories about everything. I'm like, wait a second, storytelling, is that something that you teach? And she's like, no, but I love stories. I never do something without stories. I said, so even when you're networking, you tell stories? She said, yes, of course. I said, but that's your methodology. Yeah. That's your superpower. And she's been working with it for more like 1 year. I was like, oh, and she realized that. And because of that, she has now something that is so unique that no one else has, because I've never met someone working with storytelling and networking before. So that, that secret recipe of yours, sometimes you don't even know that you have it. And I like to get that out of people's, mind and brain, and just kind of put that into method and help them to share it with the world.
Well, two things to go off of there. First off, I actually have a secret recipe because I've been a swim coach for almost 8 years now, or about 8 years. And so 3 simple steps of swimming is what I always say. It's legs, face, and arms, going about in that particular order. And that simple 3-step system is usually where everything falls into when it comes to learning how to swim. And this leads me to the next thing too. What is your secret recipe then for your coaching?
Yeah, good question. So what I would say, my more than secret recipe is my superpower. What I'm really good at is that I'm a natural integrator. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Rocket Fuel, which talks about, it's a book that has to speak about co-founders, that in every company that is successful, you usually have 2 personalities. One is the visionary, which is more the creative, and one which is more the project manager, and also the person who's speaking between the visionary and the team. So it's basically the bridge between the idea, the creative idea, and the execution of in everyday basis. So I'm a natural super integrator. I'm really good at speaking to visionary leaders and creatives, and most founders are visionaries because they have these big ideas, but they don't know how to make an actual action out of that. So what I do is that I take those ideas and I bridge that to a real action plan, and then I help them to find the clarity to execute on that. This is something I'm really good at, and something that's why I'm naturally attract visionary founders, like coaches, consultants, because they just feel it's like, oh, someone who understands what I have in my mind and can help me to structure that into a plan step by step. And I get excited by that. How do I know it's my superpower? Is because I get energy from speaking to visionary founders. I get excited because I feel like it's exactly my zone of genius. It's not hard for me. I feel good about just sitting there, and I'm fully focused on what they need help with. And I just kind of create like a computer, like, okay, that's what you need to do. This is a step-by-step process. And they come out and they come in like feeling overwhelmed and like exhausted or bored or tired or like, oh, I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to do because I'm a bit like not knowing the direction. And they come out with clarity. They come out like, oh my God, I know exactly what to do.
That's super interesting. And something that came up on my mind is that it's probably correlation, not causation, but personality types. So we were talking about introversion, extroversion, or in my case, ambiversion. And I almost wonder if there is a correlation between introverts being good integrators and extroverts being good visionaries. And sometimes they could be opposite if they need to. There's no limit to that. But I'm more of an ambivert. So I feel like I'm a little bit of both, or sometimes I'm a systems thinker. So I like to make advanced systems in Notion or other tools like that, or project management tools. But I also get caught up in the macro too much and I get my head in the clouds. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think that we have a bit of both. I mean, I'm still a very visionary, like I'm an entrepreneur, so I still have big visions. I don't stay only in integration. Like I think it has to do more with how do we think about ideas. So for me, when I speak with like my co-founder, my partner is a complete visionary. So we are like the yin and yang. It's very funny to see how we think. So when we come together, he doesn't want to talk about the ideas. He wants to go big. Like he talks about 100-year vision. He talks about big stuff, like the big goals for 10 years and stuff like that, like big risk, improving like 1,000 people, 10,000 people, things like that. I'm just thinking like, how can we put a sales page on that and launch it next week? And that's how my brain works. So I'm like, okay, I see your idea, but what's the action? And for him, the action doesn't really matter. For him, it's about how can we think bigger? How can we, when he has been speaking about that for like an hour or two, and we just like being like all these, creations coming through, and he's just feeling so good. And I'm like, but we never got to a plan. And if I put him into like action plan, he's like, but why do we speak about that? That's not important. That's not big enough. So it's about understanding like, what's the end goal? For me, the end goal is to get to an action. For him, the end goal is not to get to an action. It's about getting to really expand his thinking about what's possible. And I think that's, you have a natural tendency towards one or another. Like I like to think bigger sometimes as well. But for me, action is more important. Like I want to get to what's going to be the next action in our business or in our mission.
What can we do that 1%? They say that 1% every day, you get like 37% bigger increase in progress each year. But there's also the whole idea of 4% challenge. Not 1, not 3, but like 4. Yeah. And that gets you into flow, which is something we talked about before. Not talked about, but wrote about one of the questions here. So finding one's own zone of genius, like you mentioned earlier, or flow trigger, like we just mentioned, or even ikigai, which is another Japanese concept, is often a tough challenge for people. And so you mentioned that yours was finding those ways to kind of be an integrator or explaining success paths in simplified and actionable steps, which I stole from your profile there. But how do you go about doing that then?
So can you explain a bit more like how I go about it when I work with someone, or how do I go about it for myself?
I think more for yourself, because I think it might be more applicable to most people.
When I have an idea and I want to put it down into like a step-by-step process, I start with the 10-year vision. Like for me, if we talk about something that also changed about 4 or 5 years ago, is that I came across the 10-year vision. And that's something that I've been using all the time. We can even put that in the show notes if you want to have like a 10-year vision that you can use, that is super simple. Why 10-year vision is because before I was a creative and I always had an anchor, like I knew where I was going, but I didn't really know what I was creating, like the bigger vision, like what am I creating my life? And having a 10-year vision allowed me to find that mission of mine and like, what do I stand for? And 10-year vision is not so much about the plan, it's more about what do I stand for, what are my, my philosophy in life, what do I value. It has to do a lot of like, how do I want to spend my time with family, and how do I want to contribute in my life, what is really important. And having that was this step one, basically having a 10-year vision. For anyone who's listening and watching this, having that has changed my life. Honestly, it has really changed the way I think about my life, because I have an anchor, I have a compass, I have a direction where I'm going. And it's shifting something that every 6 months I check back. And this year especially, I had to kind of revisit that, because a lot of things had to do with in-person events and in-person groups. With our home being a school and physical school where people can come. And now we have to kind of shift that towards the online world and think how the 10-year vision is actually changing in terms of that. So that's the first thing. And then I go back to 6 months roadmap. I have like a 6 months roadmap where I think like, okay, that's a 10-year vision. What can I create right now in my life that I can apply, that can already be done right now? So for instance, our goal is to have like a center outside that the people can come to and really train themselves to become the best version of themselves in terms of thought leadership. Now, what does need to happen for that is to actually have a house where people can come. And the first thing we did last year was to say, well, actually we can move to the countryside and we can start to see, could we live outside the city? So I have been living, I grew up in Stockholm in the city. I've been living in the countryside for almost a year now, like 20 minutes away from the city, to experience, can I actually see myself living, like creating a center outside the city, like starting to kind of live in my vision. That's the first thing I'm doing. So we are really practicing every day. Like, what can I do right now? Okay, I want to have a home office. I started to create a home office. I want to be able to take weekends off. I hired people who could help me. Like, I started to look into like, what can I do right now that is like the mini action that I can apply right now into my life that is going to actually represent the bigger vision. Like one of the, it has nothing to do with business, it has to do with family. Like I'm really family oriented. So having my family coming to visit me in our house has been a very important part for me. So this month, as we're recording this, actually last month, 2 weeks, we had family coming from both Sweden and France, both my partner's parents and my parents, to be with us while the business was running. That's my ultimate goal in 10 years' time, that I can have a family life and have a running mission and business. So I was actually experimenting this month, working only 50% with my team being there to support me to see, can we create it right now already? And it worked.
Yeah.
There was no more profit. The company was not growing massively, but it was sustainable. And that for me was already a success. So, being able to kind of start to visit your vision and create what is possible right now in your vision is the first step. And then you go down to the steps of how do you go through the day? I think it's very important. Like when you start to see that I can create that in my life right now, now look into your day. How do you spend your day? Are you conscious of how you wake up? Where do you spend your energy? Are you spending your whole day doing things that you love? Or do you spend things doing are you excited about what you're doing? Are you excited about the people you're speaking with? Where does your creative flow go? How do you go through the day? I think that's really important to talk about energy flows. Like, how is your energy? Is your energy up? Are you in your highest vitality? Or are you exhausted at the end of the day and you're feeling like, why did I do this? So it's really important going from this 10 years to 6 months to go down to the day and say, every day I'm living, like every day I'm waking up, am I excited? And something I put together, maybe I can mention, it's actually quite funny. I haven't spoken about this so much. During the last lockdown, I was feeling that I had to kind of balance my day more. So I created something that is, I don't have it here, I have it somewhere else, but it's basically just a paper. And every day I write down, I just put my paper into 6 squares. And there's a square health, Fun and family, study, attract and convert, so marketing and sales, deliver, and admin. And my goal is to do like a bingo. I should have something in each and one of those 6 pillars, because I realized that if I have something in all those 6 pillars, I have a really nice day, because I spend time taking care of my health, maybe meditate or physical health like yoga or going for a walk. Fun and family, I call my parents, or I go for a walk with my partner on the beach, or I maybe call a friend or do something like that. Study. There are studies showing that if you study 1 hour per day, I mean, you will have massive success. Robin Sharma talks about that, the 1 hour per day. Really important. Just study something. It can be listening to podcast or reading a book, and then have sales and marketing. What did I do in sales marketing today? What did I do for my clients today? And what did I do for my admin for my work today? If I do all the 6 in one day, I had an amazing day.
That's fantastic. For those listening in, there is construction going on outside, so I apologize for any noise you might hear. But no, Daria, something you mentioned there made me think of something I've been working on with some content creators on YouTube, where there's a website called Notion where you can organize your life into this life operating system, as some of them call it, or a second brain, as some people say in Silicon Valley, where you dump all your mind's ideas into this system, and eventually it comes out as an output, so in and out, so to speak. And your whole sheet there that you mentioned there, I thought maybe if you could create that within Notion, then you could have a database of every day of all your different sheets. So you can go back and see what you had looked at before.
Absolutely. I mean, last time I did it because I was in lockdown in France at that time, and we could not really go out at all. We just came back from Bali, and we were in a small, tiny house in the cottage, me and my partner, and I was feeling like I need to get out and move. I need to read. I need to do stuff to really keep myself positive and feeling that I have some type of a control over my day, even if there's a lot of things I don't even know where we're going with this. And this six steps thing, the 6 pillars, I did a worksheet for people to use it as well, of course, because I was using it, was giving me results. I was really, and I still use it. Like even like throughout, I've been using for 9 months, and I know that when I use it, it's so simple and just like getting that up. And I just try to do a bit of all of them. And I think that yes, if you can have an app for that, or if you can do it, just really mentions all the important parts that we have, like physical and mental health. If you do something like meditate and yoga or go for a walk every day, you're going to feel better. If you have time where you spend with your dear ones, like all studies show that if you have great connections, the deeper intimate connections you have with your friends and family, the older you're going to get, because you're going to feel better about yourself. Like the immune system is actually going up. And then you have study. If you study every day something, you're just going to feel that your world is expanding. It can be something, learning how to paint, learning how to, YouTube, wherever that excites you. Just expand your thinking. And then for me, because I run a business, it's attract and convert, sales and marketing, taking care of my clients every day, checking in with my clients, and then admin, taking care of my team. That's crucial every day.
Well, you have 6 pillars for your kind of sheet there. I actually have what I call the 4 pillars philosophy, where it goes into the 4 aspects of the life, 4 major aspects, where mind, body, spirit, and emotion, where you try to balance all 4 of those aspects. Like you've literally alluded to at least 3 or 4 different times already in this recording, which is fantastic. But it is interesting how we're thinking in those systems thinking there.
Yeah.
Like how can we systematize some of the things we need to do every day? And
Absolutely.
Notion, by the way, Notion is really cool for that, where you can create those systems like you're saying there for your sheets, and then give it out as a template for people to use.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can just share that, and sometimes you're thinking, well, no one's going to use it. And when I started to use it, I just felt like, well, there's maybe someone else who need it, and maybe someone else who would like to discover that. Why not? It takes me half an hour to create it. If no one ever uses that doesn't really matter. But if someone uses that, that's great. Just go for it. Then
you can use it too. It's a template you can use.
Absolutely.
And so we're kind of pivoting it a bit. Where do you see the evolution of personal brands going?
Oh, I think that there has a lot to do with content creation today. Like I feel like that there's the rise of content creators, because it's so easy. Like we have seen a rise of podcasts, people going on YouTube. Video recordings is so easy with smartphones. We are really like active. So I think we're going more towards sound and video and less of like, we're always going to have books, we're always going to have written text as well, but the way we consume content today is through audio and video. So I truly believe that, I mean, if we talk about speaking and public speaking and conferences, I'm not sure we're going to go into a big conference no matter what happens again. I don't know. I mean, it's very hard to know, but I feel like, yes, we are humans, want to be together and we want to be part of a community, but I think that it has to do more with tribes. And those tribes can be online, and, you know, communities like Facebook groups are really big. Being part of communities online or offline is always going to be something really important. So the way I see personal brands is that having your voice and sharing your voice and being a leader and I think authenticity is not something I want to use as a word anymore after listening to Seth Godin yesterday, because authenticity doesn't mean so much really. It's basically showing up as you are in your professional, or, you know, showing up as you are with your community, even if you don't have it all together. I think it's important these times. Why? Because there's a question of like mental health that is really important. Like, it's hard right now. There's isolation. There are a lot of people going through hard stuff. And if you show up and like everything is perfect, but in the end, it's really not. And if you're not telling the whole story of what's going on really in your life, I think people will have a hard time to connect with you. But if you start to show up and try to share a bit more of who you are and how you think, it can be really refreshing. So I think personal brands in the future is less about this polished, you know, like, oh, look at my photos and my brand and design. It's more about, what do you stand for? What are your values? I think like this year we have seen that there's a lot of things that are important, like diversity, and what do we stand on? What do we like? Anti-racism, anti-discrimination, things that are not like the justice, the importance of equality, the importance of speaking and giving voice, and, you know, voicing in your business, voicing in your community, giving space for a conversation where we open up and we don't, you know, we change, we shift the way things have been, that when it has been with inequality. I think being a personal brand today is also about understanding your responsibility. If you're building a podcast, if you're building community, you must make sure that you know your values. What do you stand for? Like, for instance, in my community, we are really, really like, discrimination and racism is, if you're not respecting the community rules, you cannot be part of it. You need to respect each other. You need to love the others. You need to contribute. You need to support others. If you cannot do that, then this community is not the right for you, because we really want to encourage people to build a conscious co-elevation. For us, that's important. So I think that a personal brand today is more than you. It's about who are you as a tribe leader, and what is the manifesto that you stand for, and what are the, you know, empowering actions that you're taking towards your members, and the ripple effect that it will create on other people. It's really important to remember your responsibility in what you're doing.
Yes, and it makes me think, actually, a while back, I created a post called Radical Honesty, where it's the whole idea of just being just honest with yourself and with others as well, and not really holding anything back. Because at this point, what happens if you over-communicate? Well, someone might be offended by something you say, but in reality, that's 1 time out of 10. The other 90% of the time, people are going to be happy that you were able to divulge that personal information or give out some of the ideas that you might not normally share. And something that you said in one of your tweets actually resonated with me is a successful thought leader is also a successful tribe leader, like you just said there too. And they say to build a tribe around you and success will follow. How can we cultivate that tribe then, do you think?
I think that that's the thing when they talk about personal branding and thought leadership. It's like, it's not about you. You have understood something. There's some knowledge that you have, you know, some experience, you have overcome some obstacles, and that had led you having a recipe for a better such solution, something that's going to go faster or easier. That is your secret recipe. That is your method. Now you can show me the summit towards that. Like, this is where we can go. If you want to go faster or easier, this is how we get there. That's what I'm going to help you with. That's your thought leadership. Now, If you are showing it to no one, then you're not really a thought leader because no one is really following you. So what do you need to work on is as well being a great tribe leader. And what that means is that you see the summit. You see a summit that some other people might not even see. Your goal is to show the summit. You're the guide, but you need to show the summit to other people who can follow that and start to kind of see that summit with you. And that is created by creating a manifesto, creating guidelines and rules that we are common ground, that this is the way we're going to walk towards the summit together. And you create a step-by-step process. You cannot take someone who's inexperienced in hiking to a summit. You need to help them to go to step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. We have 3 steps in our academy to get someone to the highest level. You take them through the step 1, you take them through the step 2, you take them through step 3, and you help them and you empower them to take more responsibility and take more action and feel more like that summit. It's not yours because you're just the guide. You're not the one who created the summit. You're just the guide. Mm-hmm. And remembering that you're guiding people towards that action or towards that solution, has to do with tribe leadership. And what does that mean that a guide, you're not the hero of the story. The hero of the stories are the people that you're guiding, because they're the ones taking action. You are the guide, and staying in the guiding, like guide as a leader for the community, doesn't mean that you have all the answers. You just know that I want to take you there and I'm going to do my best to get you there, but I'm not the hero of the story. I'm just the guide. So if you are taking action, you become the hero. And that's really important to understand, that you are just there to help other people to get towards that goal as a thought leader. That's if you're a coach consultant, you're not the one who's gonna, if someone succeeds or fails, you are not the one who took action. They did.
Yeah.
Remembering that you're there, you're doing the best for them, and that's your mission and your goal, but you cannot replace their action.
Well, and there's a little bit of kind of Buddhism ego philosophy there too, where it's not about you. And I know I personally, like a lot of people face that problem. Like, hey, this is my personal brand. Like, this is that kind of thing. Like, no, it's about what you can do for other people. And as a coach, fitness coach, actually, particularly, there's certain things that I'll do to get them to make those next steps. But it wasn't me doing it. It was them doing those steps.
Yes.
And that's a prime example there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And super important to remember, because a good tribe leader is someone who's there for their community, someone who's showing up, creating the common ground, creating the conditions for the best experience. That's your role. Mm-hmm. You're not there to show up as this guru or like that everyone has to look up to. You're not there for that. The reason why people are showing up is because they're getting value from being with you. They're feeling empowered. They're feeling good being with other people in the community. That's why they are there. If you would not give them value, if they will not feel better around you, they will not be there. So it's never really about you. It's about them. Mm-hmm. And if we can understand that we can create the best conditions for our community members, for our academy members, for our clients and partners, and if we can be a great person to be around and we can empower people through our secret recipe, let's say, then we are going to have a better experience all together.
Well, and it's interesting because I've been trying to build a tribe around polymath. So I'm going to ask you a question that's a little bit more for me in this case, because I want to build this tribe. And I've seen all these different pockets throughout the internet of smaller groups of polymaths, and I wanted to unite all of them under one roof. Not take them away, but just give them another place to be. How can I go about doing that then, do you think?
I think that you need to know the vision. You need to see the vision for where you're going and like the bigger vision. Like I'm talking like 10x your goals. So really like, where would I be if I could not fail with this mission? Like if you would be going big with this, how big can you go? And see that so clearly that it becomes almost like a reality for visioning, through like really feeling that. That's the first step, like seeing the summit. Now, understanding the steps. What are the 3 to 5 steps that people need to go through to get to that end goal? Like if they would become the expert of what you're offering them, there is something that if they will become like you in terms of experience in these steps, what would that look like? How can you empower them to be more polymath or, multidisciplinary.
Polymathic, yeah.
Polymathic, sorry. If you can help them, like if I would become an expert polymath, like the highest level, like top 100 polymath, what does that look like? What are the things that I know? What are the experiences I have? What are the steps I've gone through? And if you can break it down to 3 to 5 steps that I can go through with you, and you can help me to do that. It can be in free content, it can be in community, it can be in your podcasts, it can be in videos. And I can go through that experience and I can be empowered to do the same. That's a really great way, because I see if I come in as a tribe member and I get value from, okay, one thing is like being together and it's great. But if I can grow with the tribe and if I can grow with the community and I can see how I'm going to expand within the community, I'll take on more ownership. I can be more like a team leader if you have a community where you can empower people to actually be part of the experience. Or if I feel like I'm learning more and I'm getting more like experience within what you're offering, then I'm going to stay for longer. Like we have people staying in our academy for years because they're growing with us, because they see how they are getting more empowered within the mission.
And my brain's trying to think about what I could do to offer to other people, because polymathy is really kind of a lifelong journey. It's not necessarily something you can achieve in the next 5 to 10 years per se. And so it is interesting to think about, because it's macro and micro. But yeah, thank you. That was powerful. You definitely did well on your end. My brain started turning the gears, so to speak. And so pivoting sort of in a way, something I ask all my guests, so I want to make sure I got it in here today, is what is a polymath to you, Daria?
To be very honest, I had to Google the word when I got on the podcast. And I think polymath, well, I speak a bit Greek. My stepfather is Greek. So poly means many. And math has to do with learning, with knowledge. So it means that we have different experience, a different learning experience. We know many things, and they might be many different topics. So that's how I see it, that we have an interest and a knowledge in several topics and several experiences. So we can see a bit of everything, but maybe not like more niched into one expertise.
I like how you took it from the language perspective as well, because I've tried to look at the etymology of it in the past. And it's interesting because I actually made a documentation on my site to explain what polymath means. When I'm moving my site, so it's actually not working right now for the documentation, but I should have sent that to you. Sorry. No, but that is interesting to think about too, because it's poly meaning much or many, polis or poli kind of thing. Yeah, I wonder, what does it mean to you personally though? Like, do you think that you could be polymathic in a way?
Yes. I think it's that, for me, it means that a human is not just one thing, and that, putting us into a box of like, you have to be that, or you have to like, so early in our educational system, we need to choose who we are going to become. When we are 15, we have to already think, if when I want to study like 5 years of something, and the pressure that comes with choosing your life at that stage, it's hard for many young people. And it doesn't get easier, because if we think that our life will depend, we're going to be like that job for 30 years, it's hard. So I think it's about, and taking away that pressure and actually maybe rethinking, like in our society today, if you look at the society that our parents grew up in, they might have had harder time to explore different parts of themselves. But today, to be very honest, we have so much choice. And many times we change direction in our business, in our mission, in our work, in our life, many times, because we have the options to do that. For instance, for myself, I ran a language school for 5 years. I lived in 4 countries, and I work with very different things. And I think that adults and seeing that ourselves as someone who's ever evolving and growing, and education being something that we can have all our life. That's maybe one of the biggest lessons my mother has taught me. She's always been like, my mother is studying Greek and Italian at the moment. She's a doctor. She's just started doing yoga meditation, and she travels. Like, she's a great role model for me. And she's always showed to me that we can study at any time in our life, and we can keep learning. And I think that education has taught me that we are not just one thing. We are not only that. We are not only one thing. And even if we have a job, or even if we have, a title, we're so much more than that. And understanding that we can always expand our creativity and the playfulness and just explore. I think life is about playfulness and exploration and just curiosity and growth and contribution, and just being a child and seeing everything as something that we're like, okay, let's just see it from the first, like with fresh eyes. That for me, that's what it represents, that curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity and the idea of the beginner's mind in yoga. And so one thing that you mentioned too is the education. I believe isn't it Sweden where you have to choose your career essentially in high school, not college? Not just college?
In Sweden, I have a great, I studied in Sweden. I lived 15 years in Sweden. I have a great educational system.
Yeah.
I was really, really lucky to study in a very, very interesting way when I was a child. Like even university wise, we had a program that we had actually 6 different topics. It was called the European program, and we had 6 different topics, and they were always mixing them. So basically we would study gender from the political perspective, and then we would study like environmental things from the law perspective. We were always mixing all different topics. So I had a very weird and interesting concept, because it allowed me to just okay, I'm gonna take this topic and we're gonna study it from 6 different angles. So I don't know if I am actually very, very happy with the education I had in Sweden, because I feel like they are very open to explore new different ways of studying.
I got it confused with different high schools. I could have sworn it was a high school thing there, but if you could send me information on that afterwards, that'd be great, because one of the biggest endeavors for Poly Innovator is this idea of a modular degree or do-it-yourself education, a self-curated list of things. But it is interesting to note that I also made that, and I don't say this straight up a lot of the time, but I made it for polymaths because a lot of people of any kind of field would enjoy pursuing their own lifelong learning, but polymaths are exemplary in it. And so I wanted to create a system for that kind of learning. And what you just said there was really
absolutely interesting. I mean, it's super interesting. I feel like in Sweden they have so many interesting ways of exploring education. I'm really, really happy that I think it has a lot to do with, going through that education allowed me to be very creative and keep learning different ways and exploring education different ways. So I can definitely send you some information about that.
Yeah, please. And so something you said actually in your talk, The Power of You, is that you really have to show who you are. And you've talked about that a little bit earlier too, just today. And what is in essence what you are, and I think that is super important for the audience to hear as well, is that I have people like you who come to the show who are multidisciplinary, because I can tell just right off the bat, Daria, that's like I asked you to come on. It's like I could tell you're just multidisciplinary, or even polymaths who come on, and many of them who don't even want to show all they have to offer. They try to niche down to that one thing, and I make it my mission as a Poly Innovator and a Polycast host to exemplify all those polymathic traits. And I say that long little spiel there because I want to ask you, how can we as multidisciplinary people show who we really are without having to overly niche down? Because as an entrepreneur, we always are told to niche down.
It's a really great question. And I believe that there's several ways of doing that. One is that, for instance, when I train the people coming to me, I always try to speak to different parts of us. So we always have the logical mind coming in, and I always say to my clients and my members, it's we need to feed the monkey brain. If you don't speak to my mind and you only speak to my heart, then even if my heart is following your message, if my mind is not logically managing to get that information, then I will not be 100% in. So let's say if you're an entrepreneur, just take an example as an entrepreneur. If you have a mission and you are creative and you're speaking in the way that only speaks to my soul and my heart, that means very emotional. You speak to my emotional connection, but you don't logically break it down in the way that my brain is going to be in, then I will have a harder time. So always try to, if you have different parts of you, just to make sure that you speak to my full me, making sure that my mind is with it. And give structure the step-by-step process. The methodology is part of that. Giving the structure of your creativity just helps me to kind of digest what's going on. That's really important, to feed the monkey brain. If you are having different parts of yourself, you can also have a priority, like saying, like, when I speak to my clients or my members, I speak to their strategic mind first, and then I cover everything else. So first I address the strategy, and then I can expand. Like, I do breath work with my clients, I do dancing with my clients, we do a lot of things. Sometimes we have sharing circles because that's what they need at that moment. But I start with the strategy in the mind, because if the monkey brain is not happy, if the logical mind is not fed, I cannot be able to do the big work with you, because you're going to kind of flip, because you will not be able to take action long term. Yeah, you need to handle it from that perspective. So I start with a logical, and then I can go any direction I want. If I feed the logical mind, I can be very free. I can do salsa and dancing in the course if I want. And I do that sometimes because we need to move as well. We can do anything as long as I'm feeding the monkey brain. That's the first thing I will say for entrepreneurs. If you can address, and that's where a lot of creatives don't manage to do that. So they're getting too much into the soul and emotion, but they don't feed the logical mind. And then people have a hard time following.
So there's two things I wanted to go off of there, because you almost simplified the 4 pillars again: the mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And you're talking about appealing to the mind pillar and the emotions pillar, getting the emotional aspect, but also the mental understanding. And
absolutely.
Something you mentioned there actually kind of confused me there, because what you said at the very beginning, the first part, it was Simon Sinek, start with why, the kind of thing we mentioned earlier: why, how, and what. But then on the second time, you actually kind of flipped it. You did how, why, and what. So what do you think about that? Is it changed per person?
No. I mean, you need to know the bigger vision. Like, for you as a creator, you need to know where you're taking people. The way you are going to show up, and when you speak to them, and when you are a tribe leader and you're going to get them on that journey with you, you're not going to present the 10-year vision to them. You have the 10-year vision, you know the summit, but you need to speak to the logical mind and show the step 1. And the way you're going to show the step 1 is you're going to speak to their logical and their emotional connection. And then you take them on the journey. But you, as the creator, the guide, the thought leader, need to know deep inside of yourself the big why. That's the base for everything you're creating. So it hasn't changed. It's that the way you communicate is just basically, how do you communicate with others? You have the vision. If you don't have the vision, it's going to be hard to communicate. But when you have the vision, when you have the 10-year vision, you know where you're going with the summit, the way you're going to communicate with your tribe, either it's your community members or it's your clients, has to be in a way that speaks both to their mind and to their soul. If you only speak to the emotions and they don't have a structure, the logical step by step, it's going to be very hard for them to understand. Does it make more sense?
Yeah, I think I got you both times. But I think what happened was I was getting caught up in the terminology where I kept thinking logical was solely how and not necessarily why. And so I think the way you explained it is fantastic. And I think that when I'm recording this, I'm going to be sitting there like, oh yeah, that's so true. I'm going to get it a second time in my, like, not recording, editing this. When I'm editing this, I'm going to sit there and be like, okay, now I'm getting it better and better. So wonderful. Something you actually mentioned a little bit earlier, but I don't find it too much online, or is that your extensive travel. You said you've been to so many different countries, and I think that's so fascinating. You've lived in Russia, Sweden, France, and Spain, and probably even more that I don't know. And so what have you learned from all these amazing countries?
Oh, I mean, I think it's my natural state. So I'm Russian, Ukrainian. I came to Sweden when I was 6. My stepfather is Greek. When I was 21, I met my partner since 10 years now, who's French Argentinian. And the first years we had the language school for 5 years, and every summer we closed the school for 4 months, and we were hitchhiking around Europe. We were hitchhiking, we had a backpack, and we did couch surfing at that time. I don't know if you're familiar with couch surfing. I've been it's like Airbnb, but it's more about like hospitality club, like where people will stay. You will stay with families and different people you don't know, strangers basically. And I've been to more than 100 homes, and I have had more than 100 families staying with me from any country in the world. And I mean, my partner speaks 12 languages. I speak 5. And we are very curious. I mean, we have so much, both of us, our natural state is multicultural, multilinguistic. That's like, I actually admire people sometimes who knows, like I have a friend, went to his country house in France once, and in his house they had 7 generations living like this. His family had been living there for 7 generations. Like I cannot even go back 2 generations. I don't know where,
Yeah.
And for sometimes I'm like, for me, it's almost exotic to think, wow, this person has lived their whole life in this city or this village, and their grandparents were living here the same. I don't even know what that means. So for me, my natural state is actually traveling. My natural state is like shifting. Like right now I'm in Portugal, Lisbon, and I've been here. For me, like this year during this time, I've been in 5 different countries.
Oh man,
in 2 different continents.
That's so crazy.
And it was not intentional. It was like a normal year. So my partner had been to 6 and 3 different continents. That's our natural state. And I think that what it gives me is that idea that nothing is really normal. Like what I love about it is that I don't take cultural codes for granted, and which means that I'm very much adaptable. Like when things comes my way, I'm like, okay, this is the way it's done here. And that gives me so much flexibility in my life.
I so resonate with that. I love traveling, but I've not been able to do it hardly enough. I live in a college town for most of my life, and it feels confining, like you were saying there. Like you don't understand. It's almost exotic and thinking like I just want to get out and travel and do things. So I really appreciate you sharing your thought on that. 5 and 12 languages. That's crazy to think about. Even 5 is still amazingly high amounts. Considering that you've lived in many of those places and also stayed there, like you said, you speak a lot of different languages, making you a polyglot. And so what do you think are the cross-section of languages, and what have you learned from that global understanding?
Languages for me, again, it's a natural thing. I grew up with several languages at home. I came to France. I want to live in France. I actually opened a not-for-profit called the Language Caravan that is still active with volunteers in France 5 years later. We have a radio show in France with the volunteers. I haven't been there for almost 3 years in that city, but they're still running it, which is really, really cool. The thing with languages is that I'm not a huge, like, when polyglots talks about like, I want to learn Esperanto and I want to learn this. I'm not that. I think that it's something that is great. It's a communication tool to connect with other people more. But my partner who speaks 12 languages is a bit more different. Like he really connects with the idea that if I speak the language with someone in their own language, you're going to be able to connect on a deeper level. And yes, when we travel, like when we were in Turkey, I remember I loved Turkey. I love hitchhiking in Turkey. I have memories of being on a fisherman boat. We were speaking to a fisherman because we learned some Turkish. We stayed there for 1 month, and we connected with this fisherman that took us on the fisher boat and showed us Istanbul, and he only spoke Turkish, and we called his wife and we spoke to her in Turkish. And I just have this memory from like 8 years ago connecting with this guy, with this man. And it was just like, it was not the touristic. He was not trying to, has nothing to do with us being tourists or like a tour guide. He was not a tour guide. He was a fisherman that connected with us because we spoke a bit Turkish, and we could do things like that. So I think it opened doors. When you speak the language, it opens doors to these experiences that you could never have. And of course, living in France, French is so important language to learn, to speak when you live in French, because everything is done in French basically in France, which is not the same in Sweden, where a lot of people speak English and they actually work in English. For me, it was important to feel independent. Like I didn't want to depend on my partner to be able to do anything. So I learned French. I speak fluently French now because I wanted to be able to be part of the community. So I think it's about, again, coming back to the why. Why am I learning the language, and what importance does it make? What difference does it make for me and with the people around me? And sometimes it's not really worth actually learning it, because you might realize that there are other ways I can connect. But for me, all the languages I learned had a question about connecting with the community, the local community, and being part of the culture.
I love that. So considering all the various different topics we went on today, I wanted to ask you too, what is the Thought Leadership Academy and Accelerator?
So yeah, about 5 years, well, I think it was 5 years ago, as I mentioned in the beginning, we had we opened a language school in France with my partner, as we spoke 12 languages in 5. And he did a TEDx talk that now it has 275,000 views. And because of that, we got a lot of attention in the French market with we are like language rebels, let's call it like that way, because we had a very different approach to how to learn languages. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we didn't know how to deal with it, to be honest, because as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm quite self-taught. I was self-taught. I created my business I learned things on the go, and I just tried things out, and things kind of worked, at that point, I realized okay, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't really know how do we grow our mission and impact, knowing the fact that people start to contact us because of this TEDx talk, and people start to contact us because of my non-for-profit. And we were doing one-on-one coaching at that point. And at some point I was like, we don't know, I don't have more hours in my day. So how do I actually grow my impact? And I started to look at solutions in the French market and also in European. I started to go to fairs. I started to kind of contact people and try to find a solution. And none of the solutions that were offered really felt right to me. They were like, get yourself an office, get your loan, train other people to work for you. And I was like, but I don't want other people to work for me. I want to be able to actually coach people, but have more impact. I want to help more people. At some point I realized okay, I have to find a solution elsewhere. And the best way for me to think was to get out of my own natural hamster wheel where I was working day in and day out on the mission. So I closed the school and I quit everything. And I basically let the volunteers take over the non-for-profit 100%. And I stepped out of everything. We left our home and we were left to Australia. Why Australia? Because I wanted to be in something that was completely different from the environment I was in. I moved to Melbourne and I wanted to really reflect. My question was how do you grow thought leadership? Because I was stuck. I was literally stuck. I was I don't know how to grow our mission. And I took 2-3 years just to study that. I was just exploring and testing and speaking to people and getting mentored and being involved in different projects and just trying to expand my thinking. And what came out of that was this mission, because I realized that I wasn't the only one. I found the solutions, but I was not the only one. As the industry is growing and a lot more people are in the same stage as I was at that point, I wanted to give that method to other people. If I found the secret recipe, I cannot keep it for myself. Yeah. So I realized that is my big mission, to help other people to actually grow the thought leadership, because what was offered before was not the right solution for me. And I know that a lot of people don't want to get in the bank loan and getting training people to train. They want to be able to actually deliver more value without losing their freedom.
And it does seem to think that too, you have to be able to scale it up and be able to do a lot of different things when you're in that situation too. And considering all of your experience too, I want to ask, where can people find you online? So that way, if they're wanting to join the Thought Leadership Academy or do anything with you, look at your book, where can they find you?
So they can check out daryav.com. So I have a very long name, as you can imagine. But so Darya and then simplev.com. You'll find my social media. And you can also join our Facebook group. It's called Thought Leadership Accelerator Community. So you just write TLA community. If we can maybe put that in the links in the show notes below, that'd be going to be easier. And then we usually share about 1 or 2 live mini trainings per week for free in the group. And actually I'm going for a challenge of going live, if I can, every day in the upcoming months with my podcast. It's going to be even more content coming up.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen a lot of challenges like that during the quarantine, because it's just one of those things where you can really take advantage of this time. And
absolutely.
Well, and I'll make sure I have links in the description for you as well. Actually, I looked down. I have a ton of links there for you.
Wonderful.
And what could be our call to action for the audience then today?
The call to action is really to take action on something that you heard today. I think that's the most important. And if there is something that you resonated with, that we spoke about, that came out from this conversation, have a try. I really want people not just to get inspired, but actually get out of cave mode. What I mean by that is realizing that you have so much potential and there's so much creativity that has to come out, and we need you right now. We need more people to share their secret recipe, to share their zone of genius, and just try things out, because creativity, and I mean, creativity for me is not only, I call our clients mind artists, because I think we are all artists somehow. And it's a creative space that we have either through our thoughts or through our creativities, our videos and audio, or whatever you're creating. It's something that is resourcing all of us. It's healing all of us. It's helping us to expand, to feel more playful, to be more curious. So creation is the key here. Create wherever you want. Just be out there and create, because by creation you are of service, and you're creating and you are putting your effort towards others. You're going to change the direction where you're stepping away from that, inner self thoughts of not being enough and like, what am I doing, and going towards creation. Just create, just have fun with it, just explore, because from that you can help other people to also be free to explore what they want to create.
I love that. Thank you, Daria. And
Pleasure.
Also, just thank you for coming on the show today. I knew you were going to be a good guest, but it's always surprising just how good people are when they come on. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed being here with you. Thank you. You're an amazing host. And I just want to say that it's impressive how much you research your guests. It's really, really great. So I am really grateful for being here with you today.
Thank you. And so once again, this is Dustin Miller, Poly Innovator, and Daria Vudo Pianonova. And so on the Polymath Polycast.